So how on earth do you become a millionaire before you can even legally drink? Well, today we're cracking up in the playbook of someone who did exactly that, Iman Gadzi. We're going to break down the 7 core principles he says were his blueprint for such an unconventional success story.
And yeah, he's the first one to tell you just how wild this sounds. This quote really sets the stage perfectly, doesn't it? It's not just about the $1 million, it's about doing it at 18, an age when, most of us are just trying to figure out what to major in. He emphasizes that this isn't normal, and that's exactly why he believes these principles are so absolutely crucial.
And believe me, the story did not stop at 1 million. To really get a sense of how powerful this advice is, you just have to look at the results. By the time he was 23, that number had exploded into the tens of millions. So, what's the secret sauce here? Let's get into the blueprint. All right, so the playbook is basically broken down into 3 phases. First up, the founder's foundation. This is all about the internal work, right? It's about building your character before you even think about building your wealth. This first principle, man, it just cuts right through all that get-rich-quick noise we see everywhere. It's about humility. It's about respecting the process. In a world that's obsessed with overnight success, this is such a powerful reminder that you have to earn your stripes. You gotta pay your dues. And you can see that path laid out so clearly here. You start out as the pawn, you're listening, you're learning, you're doing the grunt work, kind of like being the ball boy on a football team, You do that job first, you earn respect through your service, and then, only then, do you get a shot at being the captain, the king. The point is simple. You can't skip the steps. Okay, so once you've really embraced that pawn mindset, the next principle is all about managing how the world perceives you. Because let's be real, when you're young, people are already looking for reasons to write you off. His advice? Don't give them an easy excuse based on how you dress. And the difference here is so important. This isn't about buying ridiculously expensive clothes. No, it's about making strategic choices. It means you're trading those loud, flashy brands and trendy styles for a classic, timeless look. The whole goal is to be able to fit into any room and be taken seriously, basically dressing for the job you want, not the one you have. With early success, there comes a massive risk: your own ego. And that brings us to the third principle, which is basically a powerful insurance policy against your own arrogance. The idea is to find some arena in your life where the feedback is just raw and unforgiving. Think about combat sports. There's nowhere to hide in a ring. Or entrepreneurship, where the market just does not care about your feelings. It will tell you, bluntly, if your idea is any good. These are the kinds of forces that keep you chained to reality. And this quote right here, it just perfectly captures what's at stake. Without that external reality check, success can easily inflate your ego until you yourself become your own biggest obstacle. So humility in this context, it isn't a weakness. It's an absolutely essential strategic tool for long-term survival. Okay, so that covers the internal foundation. Now, let's get into the second phase, sharpening the focus. This part is all about building a fortress around your time and your energy by managing all those external influences. And if you're building a fortress, the first potential weak spot you've got to manage is your relationships. So, the fourth principle presents a really stark choice for your building years. It basically argues that when it comes to partners, there's absolutely no middle ground. Look, the argument is simple. You either go all in with what he calls a day one partner, someone who is a genuine, rock-solid support system from the very beginning, or you stay completely focused on your mission. A day one partner isn't a distraction. He says it's the single most valuable asset you could possibly have. So why the all-or-nothing approach? Well, it really just comes down to strategic timing. From his perspective, a man's peak attractive years are between 25 and 35. So, the teens and early 20s, that time should be treated as a strategic building phase, a time to create a foundation, not get sucked into a casual dating scene that he calls both brutal and distracting. This next principle kind of refines that whole idea of focus, but it applies it to your social life. It's all about understanding the massive difference between your network and your inner circle. And the distinction he makes is simple, but it's really profound. Your network of acquaintances, yeah, that can and should be large. Be polite with everyone, don't burn bridges. But your inner circle, your true friends, the people you would literally trust with anything, that has to be incredibly small and fiercely protected. He thinks confusing the two is a critical mistake. All right, now for the final and maybe the most difficult phase. So you've built the character, you've sharpened your focus, you've made it. But how do you stop yourself from losing it all? This section is all about sustaining that success. This principle is a serious warning. Look, making the money is one challenge, but keeping it, that introduces a whole new level of pressure, of temptation. The success itself becomes the ultimate test of your character. And here he lays out the classic, almost predictable path to self-destruction that he's seen time and time again. It starts with success, which leads to flexing and lifestyle creep. That then breeds complacency, and you start neglecting the very business that got you there in the first place. And the final step? You watch it all get taken away. So how do you avoid that downward spiral? You have to be proactive. This is where those external, humbling forces we talked about become so important. The choice is really simple. You either choose your challenges, new goals, tough mentors, or life is going to choose them for you. And trust me, it's usually in a much more painful way. And that brings us to the final and maybe the most practical piece of advice in the whole playbook. This is a strategy literally designed to protect you from your own worst impulses, especially when you're young and suddenly have a lot of cash. And notice the key feature here: investing in assets that are not easy to sell. We're talking property, physical gold, things that are intentionally hard to get rid of quickly. Why? It creates built-in friction. It's a mandatory cooling-off period that can save you from one single impulsive, really foolish decision. This really gets to the psychology of why investing is so much smarter than flexing early on. The argument is that, look, when you're 19 with a supercar, you're not getting the respect you think you are. People just assume you got lucky or it's your parents' money. It's way more effective to quietly build your wealth and enjoy it later when your success is just undeniable. So, there you have it, the 7 principles from a young millionaire's playbook. From embracing being the pawn to literally making your money hard to reach, it's a full blueprint. But now I want to leave you with this final thought. Looking at this whole list, which one of these principles do you think is the absolute hardest to follow in the world we live in today?